What up, Sci Fam? I've got some more vocabulary for you here in our genetics unit. Today, we're going to learn what is a karyotype, along with some other important vocabulary. So, a karyotype is going to be our topic of conversation, and make sure you title your page Karyotypes. So, a karyotype is used to match complementary chromosomes. And they're put next to one another. So if I got a picture of all of your chromosomes from a cell, I would find the two that were the same size and same shape and put them next to each other. So I would expect that this chromosome would have another one that looked something similar to the first one. And this one would have one that was kind of the same size and shape. And so I'd match those next to each other. And the reason is because one of these chromosomes came from mom and one came from dad. One came from mom and one came from dad. And so when we look at your traits, like for example your hair color, part of your trait is on this chromosome, the other part of your trait is on that chromosome. Together, those two genes give you your trait, which is your hair color or your eye color or your nose shape. Same thing on any other chromosome. Maybe here on this chromosome there is a gene, and together these two work together to create what we know as our traits. So maybe this is if you have like a cleft chin or not. So a karyotype is used to match the complementary chromosomes. Remember complementary, maybe you've heard it in math class, but it means that the two that are basically the exact same. So the two chromosomes, we put those next to each other. But there's a better word we have in science, or at least we create a new word in science to talk about complementary chromosomes. We call these homo, because homo means same, homologous chromosomes. Yeah, it's a weird word, homologous chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes, if we were to define it, it's a matching set of chromosomes. One chromosome coming from the father and the other from the mother. So homologous chromosomes are when you match up your chromosome from your father with the chromosome from your mother. Now, humans, not all animals or species or plants or anything, but humans in particular have 23 pairs of homologous chromosomes. So that means is if we have 23 pairs, 23 times 2 means that if you were to count all of our chromosomes, we have a total of 46 total chromosomes. All right. As I said earlier, your traits, these are things like if your earlobe is attached, or the shape of your eyelid, or the shape of your nose, the color of your eyes, the texture of your hair. These are all examples of traits. And your traits are a result of how the two homologous chromosomes affect each other. So if this is my chromosome, let's say from my mother, let me use that scissors here to figure out which one would be the one from my father. What do you think it's going to be? Which one is the one that matches the best? It would be this one. Yep, you were right. I heard you thinking. So I'd put that one next to that one because you can see they're about the same size and shape. So, yep, there we go. Mother, and then this one is from father. Mother and father. So these two are what we would say are our homologous chromosomes. And that means that part of your trait is on this chromosome, the other part of your trait is on that chromosome. But each chromosome has multiple traits on it. So here, let's say I've got more than one trait on this chromosome. So the genes are the parts of DNA that code for our traits. So this one has, at least for what I drew, just 3 different genes on it, which will then equal our traits. But it's a combination of your mother and father chromosome that allow us to do that. We'll learn more about how that mother chromosome and father chromosome interact together in the black diamond portion of the unit. All right, so like I said, our traits are coded by our genes. So let's define gene real quick. So a gene, all of these things here are our genes. And genes are sections of DNA on the chromosome that codes, like computer programming, but it codes for the organism's traits. All right, so a gene is that section of DNA on the chromosome that has the code, the instructions that gives us, or any organism, their traits. So when you have a karyotype, of a human, you would have 46 total sausage things all laid out everywhere. They don't just match up right next to each other. So part of the job of a geneticist is to create a karyotype. Basically, they got to get out their paper, scissors, and glue and cut each one out and tape them next to each other. So once they pair all homologous chromosomes, I know you're not tired of me saying homologous chromosomes yet. Homologous. So after pairing all homologous chromosomes using a karyotype, because a karyotype is the process of pairing all homologous chromosomes together, one of the things that you can notice from a karyotype is that if the last 2 homologous, if the last 2 homologous chromosomes, or at least maybe they're not homologous because, but if they're homologous, if the last 2 chromosomes left are the same size and shape, then the human is born a female. And we call this XX because you have 22 chromosomes, and your 23rd set of chromosomes, of homologous chromosomes, are your sex chromosomes. And instead of calling it your 23rd set of chromosomes, we call them either XX or XY. And XX means that they're the same because it's 2 X's. So if you put them next to each other, they would look the same. If the last 2 homologous chromosomes don't match, well, they wouldn't be homologous, but if those last 2 chromosomes don't match as you're doing your karyotype, then the human is born male. And that's what we would call XY. And because XY means that they're different from each other, they're not the exact same. So you'd have your X, and then the Y is usually this little short one. So if the 2 don't match, then we know that the organism would be born male. If they do match, they're born female. So let's take a look at some actual karyotypes. So if we zoom into this karyotype, we can see that first off, all of these are the same size and same shape. So those 2 are a different size and shape than these ones down here. So it's important to match them each up, and what we do is we start with the longest, and then they get smaller as we go, with the last ones being little tiny short guys. But in this one, you can see that the final chromosomes, the 23rd, if we call this the 23rd set, we call them X and Y. Well, this one, since they both matched, they are both X. So if this person had 2 X sex chromosomes, then this person would be born female. If we come over to this karyotype, you can see all of these are matched up once again. So we're seeing that pattern of them being matched up, same size, same shape, meaning that one came from mom, one came from dad. These 2 genes code for your traits. But if we look at this one, look at this. This is a huge X chromosome here, especially in comparison to the other ones. So since they don't match, we'd say that this person has 1 X sex chromosome, 1 Y sex chromosome. This person would be born male. Now there's other information just beyond biological sex that can be determined from a karyotype. Another thing we can determine is if there's any extra chromosomes. So this one's obviously from Shutterstock. It's just a digital picture. It's not an actual one. But you can see this person has 2 that match plus 1 that's a little bit shorter. They have an extra chromosome that somehow got in here through a clunky process of meiosis. And so since this person's sex chromosomes are XXY, they actually could still live and be born, but they would be born with a genetic syndrome that we call Klinefelter syndrome. And so they would have some disabilities that could impact their life because they have that extra chromosome. Over here, we have another karyotype. This one is a common genetic disease that people are more aware of. And this one, since there are 3 chromosomes, we would call this trisomy, because there's 3 of them, trisomy 21, also known as Down's syndrome. So anyone born with Down syndrome actually has an extra chromosome here, and they have 3 homologous chromosomes at the position of 21. And that's what causes somebody to be born with Down syndrome. Now in this case, think about it. Would this person with Down syndrome be born male or female? Well, there's no Y chromosome because the 2 X chromosomes are next to each other. They're the same size. So this person would be born with Down syndrome, but they would be born as a biological female. So karyotypes can be really useful for genetic diseases as well as determining the biological sex of a child. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is try to solve this karyotype. You'll find this page in the extras bin, and it's your job to cut out each of these chromosomes and find the place in which it would match up with the one next to it over here on the right side. And so it can be a little bit of a challenge because some of these are kind of small or long, or they have some kind of clear pieces here. But cut each one out, use some tape to then match each one up so that we have each of these chromosomes over here have their homologous friend sitting next to them. And then it's your job to determine if this person is going to be male or female based on whatever chromosome you have left over, if it's going to be an X or a Y. So good luck on that assignment. Make sure you tape that as well into your science notebook following this page that we just discussed called Karyotypes. Out. Yo. Peace.